we have to engineer our own success. And so that's really what we've done. Is we've said we're going to make sure that every single franchisee that opens cash flow positive, so that then they can say, yeah, this is the best decision I've ever made in my life. And they can go and they can tell the new franchisees, and this is how we build a groundswell through that, right? Is having it be successful.
Aloha, and welcome to another episode of Groundswell Origins Podcast, where I connect you to outstanding humans and sustainable ideas. I'm your host, Scott Martin, and today we have Katrina Wyckoff, who is the founder of a brand called Vertica Fitness. And we detail her entire journey from beginning to end, from rebranding, renaming, value proposition design, the mission that she has, the creating a movement and a groundswell, the expansion and the future. It's such a great episode because this is actually, in full disclosure, she's a client, and we work together. And I was bringing her along in the branding journey, and we talked about the entire process as well. She talks a little bit about her background and her why and why she's doing this. This is going to be an incredible transformational episode. I mean, this is about a brand that's transforming the world. It's the ideal example of building a groundswell, and can't wait for you to dive into this whole episode. So without further ado, let's paddle in. All right, welcome to the show, Katrina. Welcome.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Oh, I'm excited to have this conversation. We first met in, I believe it was February 2021?
22.
Okay, so yeah, it's even closer. That's right, 22. And at that point, that was a Tony Robbins event, and you first introduced me to your company, your brand, your vision of that you're creating. And can you tell us a little bit about that first interaction and the brand that you, at the time, what it was called and what your vision was, and we'll kind of dive into this amazing story. You guys, you got to listen to this, like just the evolution of this brand and where she's taken it. This is going to be a really exciting episode. So, but let's just start with the backstory of like how we first met and that first interaction.
Yeah, so we met at a Tony Robbins event, and it was definitely I had specifically come to the event knowing that I wanted to work on my brand. I was launching a franchise, and we were at the place where it was like, okay, everything's ready. You just need to make sure your marketing's ready. And so my partners were like, go to Tony Robbins and find somebody to help you with your brand. I'm like, okay, great. And, I kind of asked around, and it was definitely like, hey, you got to work with Scott Martin. And so I was like, okay, we got to work together.
When we were talking before that, we didn't even have any discussion about it. We had a mutual friend, Andre, who has a private jet. And so I ended up flying. He invited us to fly to the event in his private jet, which I was like, oh, I'll do that. That'll be fun. And so we met at his house, and then we ended up flying together. So, but we were just like, so it was kind of like, it was a bit of a fairy tale landing. I think, like literally arriving at this event when we first got to know each other. It was pretty fun.
For sure.
So when you were talking to me about this, you're describing, it was called US Fitness or something. I think that was the name.
Yeah, so as we went to launch the franchise, originally we were going to call it Pull Fitness USA. And it was very much focused on hey, we're going to make this an Olympic sport. It's all about sports and fitness. And really just that was because I was told hey, in order for the market to accept this, you really have to lean into the fitness side. And I was like, well, I know I want to franchise this. And so I'm just going to kind of do what I've been told to do and lean into that. And I love the fitness side of it. I run the US Pole Sports Federation. The fitness side and the sports side are something I'm super passionate about anyways. And so I was like, great. Okay, it's Pull Fitness USA. It's all about the Olympics. It's all about sports. And let's make a brand.
And I remember that, and I think it was, and when the way you were describing it, actually, it kind of made some sense because it felt a little bit like a gymnastics gym. I think was sort of the vibe, the feeling, or whatever. And I think when you were approaching me about you and I working together about the brand, one of my famous questions that I ask everybody is, "What's the sacred cow? What doesn't change?" And that, at that point in time, it was the name, actually.
Yeah, it totally was.
Right. And so I was like, okay, great, I'll play along. So now we got to figure this thing out. Right. So, so just in full disclosure, of course, Katrina and I work together. She's a client of mine, and we're just going to describe a little bit of this journey because there's some really exciting lessons in this whole process of the journey that we were going through. But if you could just maybe, let's just talk a little bit about what's your vision for the brand. What is Vertica Fitness? What is it?
So, Vertica Fitness, as far as like the vision, really what I have set out to do is to help to bring pole fitness to the masses. Basically, to our goal is to build 1,500 locations across the country, really across the world. And because I really am just so passionate about what it's about. So, in answer to that question, what it's about is really helping people to establish within themselves their own sense of worth and their own sense, in essence, of belonging. And so we have a manifesto, which, obviously came from, well, I'm sure we'll go into this, but the manifesto is everybody belongs, everybody is beautiful, and everybody can go vertical. So it's really what it's about, is helping to just share that message and provide that place of belonging for people within the studio through a super fun workout that they love.
Mm-hmm. And so that's a pretty big contrast from the original vision.
Yeah, like day and night.
Yeah. And so let's talk about that journey, the journey between that. So, that was over the course of, I don't know, must have felt like 9 months or something that we ended up working together. And we went through basically, we came up, this really sort of came up in two different directions, if I recall. We were talking about your really doing a deeper dive on your origins and why you do this, and actually why the customers benefit from this. And one of the things that you brought up that I want to touch on is this saves lives. And I'm like, really? Tell us about that.
So, um, yeah, basically, okay, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. It was actually at a Tony Robbins event before we met that it was Business Mastery. And at that point, I was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to continue doing pole. It was like right at the end of the pandemic and just like super, super stressful. And went through the Tony Robbins event, and it gave me this opportunity to really just connect back to my why of why I do this. And in essence, it comes down to, there have been so many times, like, when people walk into the studio, the first thing that they share with us is usually, I don't have any upper body strength. Like, we just hear that over and over and over again. But now, at the end of their journey, or like, I guess it's not the end, but like at the maturity of their journey, what we hear from them is, Katrina, this literally saved my life. And what happens is, like, these clients share this with us, and it's just over and over again, these people, and it's not like they're broken, but they have gone through something traumatic, which at almost everybody has, right? Almost everybody has a story. Actually, everybody has a story. And so people come and they're just looking for that opportunity to feel safe, for that opportunity to feel like they're enough. And we give them this place where they're able to basically fix themselves. And we hear it over and over again. Katrina, you saved my life. Katrina, you saved my life. Katrina, you saved my life. And that's where, like, at that Tony Robbins event, I was like, I have to do this. I freaking love what I do, right? I love what I do. And so as I connected back to that why of being able to help so many people to just build their self-confidence and feel like they're okay, and hearing so many people talk about literally that they were like on their last days. They were literally contemplating the worst. And they came in and they said, I'm going to try this one last thing, just to be able to, who knows, maybe pole fitness will help me. And through pole fitness, they found that confidence, they found that security, they found that piece of themselves, right? They developed that strength and they found that piece of themselves. And so, at its essence, that's really what it's all about. And why I'm so passionate about building this is I know that there are so many people out there that are looking for something, and we have it.
Hmm. And I remember when I heard that, I was skeptical. I was like, at first, just going, "Really?" Like, but I became curious, and that curiosity that led through the course of time of us working together, me recognizing and seeing just this incredible vision and that you have, and the potential by shifting. And we both kind of collaborated on this shift, and the other sort of moving force outside of the deep resonating mission, which is different than just fitness and going to the Olympics and things like that, was you came up against a trademark block, more or less, that you just weren't able to trademark the name. And that opened up, I think that was the biggest gift, because that opened up the door for us to really, that was when you kind of took a step back and we really brought it back down to the studs, if you will, and went, everything's on the table. And so in that naming process, which I recall was pretty intensive, and we were going through a lot of names. And but really what it came down to was we did the value proposition, and we really connected to this deeper why, the effectiveness that this doesn't just change lives. It's like, this is reshaping and giving people their sense of community back, people that want to reclaim their body and their body image. And it just really, I just think it just gave us wings to kind of really start building what this franchise could possibly be in a blue ocean where nobody's competing this in whatsoever. You want to share a little bit about that, like the everybody belongs, the journey that we kind of went through?
Yeah. So, um, again, just leaning into the fact that, why I was so like, I want to work with you, I want to work with a brand, or I want to get this right. Right. Like, I believe in this so much. I was like, we got to get this right so that when we go to market, the things that are important are what are facing forward. And so, as we really leaned into that, and then we ran up against that trademark block, it was like you said, it was just such a great gift because all of a sudden it was a clean slate. And so, this is where it was just like this weekend, and it was over the course of this weekend. And oh, and you know what? There was also another thing. I do have to pay a little bit tribute to my husband Mike, because as I was like, okay, it's like sport, 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 and he kept being like, Katrina, you're killing it, and I'm like, like in a bad way. He's like, you're killing the magic, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we love this Olympics and all this, but I just kind of let that sit for a little while, and as I leaned into the things that you and I had been talking about and the value proposition, I was like, I know why I do this, and I know why my clients do this. And it's not because they care about the Olympics, right? I mean, there are some people that are working for the Olympics, but that's not why, right? People are doing this because they want that sense of belonging and they want to feel comfortable in their own bodies, right? And so I started playing with this idea of like, love your body. That was my initial direction that I was going. And I was like, okay, well, maybe our slogan is love your body. And I sent that out to a couple of people. And I had like a picture of, it was a picture of me, like at my very fittest with the slogan, love your body. And I sent that out, and I sent it to, actually, it was one of my sisters. I don't know if I've ever told you this before, Scott, but I sent it to one of my sisters. And my sister was like, Katrina, that's really beautiful. And you're so beautiful. But what if people don't look like you? Should they still love their bodies?
We did
And
tell me this. That was part of the discussion. Yeah.
yeah, I literally, like, it's gonna make me cry now. Like, I started just it hit me so hard because in all honesty, like, I don't look like that picture anymore, right? Like, that was a picture from when I was competing, like, 6 years ago, and I was like, "Well, that's not even me anymore, and that's not my sisters, and that's not my clients, and so why am I trying to tell people, 'Hey, you gotta look like this in order to love your body?'" And I was like, I know I'm trying, but I'm missing it still. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, what I need to tell these people is not, hey, you have to look like this. I need to tell them, you belong here. Right. And like I was like, that's everything, is for them to understand, hey, you belong here. You're wanted here. This is for you. This is for you. And when you come here, you're going to be loved and accepted exactly as you are. Um, I mean, we're going to do this really cool workout together that's going to help you to get in amazing shape and feel great. But that is all secondary. What's going to happen is when you come here, you're going to realize how beautiful you already are. And I was like, that is the message that I want to tell my sisters. That's the message I want to tell myself. That's the message I want to tell my clients. Right. And so that's why I was like, it has to be everybody belongs here. And I was like, that's our slogan. And then, you gave me such another just great gift. And um, you told me, and you told me this all the time, which this is a whole other part of the subject, but you told me to be brave. And you suggested that we drop the here and just lean into everybody belongs, and basically just like hold that up as a truth, instead of just having it be a slogan, just having it be a truth, having it be the essence of the brand. And nothing few things have ever felt so right as just that, because that is what I want to declare, that is what I want to say. And just helping people to feel that worth. Anyways.
Yeah, no, I remember it was pretty moving, and I remember it was everybody. Everybody belongs here, and
Yeah,
the other shift was everybody.
absolutely.
Everybody belongs, and that almost has the double meaning. I think that has really captured people's attention. That's part of like what I think is really fun is you were a collaborative. I mean, the best brands are collaborated. I think I've told you this multiple times, and I'll say this to who's listening, is like some of the best brands are when the brand strategist isn't the one like showing up with all the goods. It's coming out of the person. Like it's all in you. I knew it was in there. I'm just like, that's why I said be brave. Like, let's be really brave if you're willing to, and just bare your soul, if you will. And I'll just help you. I'll add it. I'll contribute. Like I'll be, and you and I, that's it's probably one of my most favorite brand experiences working with you, because you leaned into it. You were brave, and look at the outcome. Like, I mean, look at what has happened as a result of this, which we'll get to later in this episode. But that right there, I remember our hair stood up. We were both like, "Oh, that works really nicely." And I think that kind of leans into maybe even a bigger thought, which is you weren't really building a franchise, and you're not building a franchise. You're you're doing a lot more. You're building a movement. You're creating change. You're transforming the world. You're creating a groundswell. I'm literally before my own eyes, like seeing you're embodying my book, to such a degree. Maybe share a little bit about that, because that right there, when I noticed that you've done your pitches to franchise owners and to talking to people, they it's like table stakes to talk about how good the business is and its functionality, the business performance. But when you go into the brand, and that the brand isn't just a cool brand, there's so much more meaning than it just being like a slogan. Maybe share that a little bit, because I see that as being, when I see some of your reviews of franchisors, they're just all over it. Like they're just like, I'm now, there's meaning. It's meaningful for them.
Yeah. So, as part of like the sales process for selling a franchise, a potential franchisee goes through a series of discovery calls. And basically, they're interviewing us, but we're also interviewing them. And the number one thing that I'm looking for when I'm talking to a potential candidate for a franchise is, do they get the brand? Because I can teach anybody how to run a business, and I can definitely teach people how to pull, but I can't teach people how to care. And so if they don't get it, then I don't want them a part of the brand, because we are changing the world. And like I tell them that. And I say that even though it sounds cliche, we're changing the world one spin at a time. And I, I know that the world needs this, right? Again, I lean into my sisters and my daughters and just all of my amazing clients, and I want to be the force of change that I didn't have. And I mean, we've talked about this before. I mean, I know you know my story, and I think I talked about it on the last one, but I grew up with an eating disorder, a really horrible eating disorder. And it was, of course, just absolutely debilitating to the point to where I tried to take my own life, which is why, when all of these things about talking about saving lives and all of these other things, it hits home. It hits home because I've lived it. And it's like, I found a way out of that. I found my own saving grace. And of course, through lots of amazing help and therapy and all of that other stuff. But I want to be the change. I want people to be able to see their value, not just wrapped up in a specific, hey, society says you have to look like this. Right? I want people to be able to be, especially women, but it's so much more than just women, right? As we've created this space, we have had so many men and non-binary people who have also said, hey, this applies to me too. And we're like, yeah, this, sure, absolutely applies to you too. But anyways, just being able to provide that knowledge, that information, that example to the world that is so needed.
And the vision of the brand, the challenge that you were faced with is you're in an industry that has a cultural perception of, and in fact, I maybe talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced with Facebook and stuff in your previous efforts, that were, unfairly, casting light on this business, because most people view it as strippers and things of that nature that are, or something that's objectionable. And your vision of going, this mission is so strong, Scott, we need to make sure. We were doing our value proposition design, and we landed on this one piece. I don't know if you remember this, but we landed this one piece. I remember this so well. It's like this is like literally the case study of case studies in my mind. But it's like we landed on, what are one of the reasons that people do not do this? And it was the stigma of pull. And that was actually, that line was what guided the name, and so many, and that right there was like the was like this powerful stoppage of your vision that we had to break. We had to bust it down, and that's what led to this brave movement of the name and everybody belongs, like that. I feel like that was another one of the, I'm trying to paint a picture for you guys, like all the different forces that came together for this brand, which I think is, and I just want to share that a little bit, because the stigma pulled, maybe share a little bit about that, and how this name and brand and what you've done to actually bust, you're just breaking this, you're changing the category.
Yeah, so I definitely just want to put out there that we absolutely support strippers. We employ them, we support their work. Like I want to make sure that that's very clear. But as there is, of course, the stigma of, for so many people, that they don't want to do it or they're nervous of doing it because of just all of the things. And so really how we have combated that is that we have just worked on education, in the fact of, like, yeah, there are strippers that do this. Absolutely, there are. But there's also moms that do this. There's also dads. There's also kindergarten teachers, fighter pilots, doctors, nurses, all types of people can come in and experience a really super fun workout. And also, we talk a lot about just the workout side of it and all of that still, but there is this whole other benefit that comes with this, of like being able to feel sexy, being able to be okay with your body in that type of way. And so, yeah, that's been just a really beautiful part also. So,
Yeah, and you're right. It's like, it's a mischaracterization of the. It's like saying that anybody could use anything and say, have their own opinion about it. And I think that's what's true about what you're creating is you're completely changing people's perception of what that is, and how it actually is really truly helping people in such a it's something about it is, I think, the way we've been describing it, like the idea of spinning, gravity, losing gravity, and getting vertical. That's where the some origins, some of the name was. And you go vertical in terms of ascending to becoming more aspirational. They're just the interweavings of this, of your vision is just I mean, talk a little bit about how this has actually been taken by storm. Like, what's been the success since you've launched it?
Oh my gosh, it's so fun. I'm not even sure where to start. So, since I do know where to start. When you and I were working together, I mean, I had a super profitable business. It was beautiful. It was so fun. We had, all sorts of people, but I think we were around 200 members at both locations when we had started working. We are at 600 members for both locations.
In less than a year. Oh, that was a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just insane the growth that has happened within the studio, and then of course we have 5 franchisees that have come on. We've got several more that are in the process of just coming on board also, and our first 3 franchisees that are now open, they all opened their doors right about that 100 member mark, and are already at that like cash flow process pretty much right at opening their doors, which is like mind blowing.
Oh man, if you know
But
enough about franchise and actually businesses, how long it takes to cash flow, just to cash flow your business, that's incredible. That is a feat.
yeah, and so much of um really where the strategy comes from is in building a groundswell. So kind of coming back to your question earlier about building a groundswell, um we do a free class, which is unheard of in the industry, but we do a free class. And so much of it is because I want people to come in and experience it. I want them to come in and experience the magic of Vertica, of feeling the manifesto in action, of doing our classes. Our classes are Fit, Flirt, Fly, and then of like basically just being able to take that out into the world. So I train my staff and our franchisees that there's going to be people that don't buy. They come in, take the free class, and they don't buy, and they are just as important as everybody else. Right? That's that 45 minutes you get to love on those people and then send them back out into the world. But that is how we build a groundswell, because those people are going to have their lives changed even in that short 45 minutes. And they're going to go and they're going to tell their friends, and they're going to tell their friends. And it was so fun the other day. I don't remember where I was at the salon, and told somebody, "Oh yeah, I do. I run the pole fitness studios," and they're like, "Vertica?" They
Oh,
totally. I was like, "What?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, they know my name. Like they know the name of the studio." And I mean, I've been in business for almost 20 years, and I've never had someone when I'm like, "Oh yeah, I run this studio," have them be like, "Oh, I've heard of you," right? I mean, it's a big town. So,
mhm.
anyways, it's completely working here in Tucson. We are exposing it to a massive amount of people, and of course, many of those people register. They sign up. They become members, and we're seeing that happening in San Diego, Las Vegas, and getting ready to do it in all these other places also. So yeah, that is so where the strategy is intertwined with the brand of we want to expose as many people as possible to our mission and to our message. And so that's just been so fun, the reception that it's received.
Mhm. And it's like, and it's a there's some really cool lessons here that I think can be shared. It's the idea around, there's brand and then there's strategy. And I might argue, if you do the brand well, that is the strategy. It's a way to
Absolutely.
market without marketing. You want to share a little bit about how that's affected how it's collapsed, I guess, maybe the cost of marketing in some way?
Yeah, so it's, like we held up that big sign, everybody belongs, metaphorically. Now we're just, we're continuing to hold that up into the community. And it's like a magnet. Now we're still we're still doing lots of advertising and lots of marketing, but it's like the marketing works now. right? When we've got a message that works, when we pour that gasoline onto it, that's when we see
It's
like
the
the fire go
foundation.
like crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so
Yeah.
it's,
Ineffective
we're
brand with advertising.
magnetizing.
I
Yeah,
was going to say an
yeah.
ineffective brand with advertising, you got to spend more, but you have effective brand, then you can do the ads on top of it. It accelerates.
Yeah,
It's the
for sure.
foundation pieces. Yeah.
For sure. Well, and you asked earlier about like the Facebook and that kind of stuff, where this all kind of coming together. I had all of my accounts deleted while we were working together. And it was just absolutely horrible, all of my accounts. And I was like, well, I guess I'm starting over. But, somebody had reported my content, which was fitness content, but they'd reported my content, everything got deleted. And so that's where we started building now the Vertica Circle Network, which is on Mighty Networks. And that's been so fun because even the people that don't buy a membership, we bring them over and we've got some free content there and they're able to still be a part of the community versus just like, in and out and never see again.
Okay, so now we're going to go to a whole different discussion direction inside the brand, which is great though, because I'm literally when I talk to people about you, it's like if I pick my best menu items of like how to build brand and marketing, you're hitting them all. And so one of them was we talked about, which was the private virtual networks. I did quite a bit of research, as you recall, me sharing it with you, and when I first introduced it to you around. And I think Jaya and Ian, I just finished an interview with them because they had the similar problem. They're sex educators. They had to completely figure out a way to run their business without the constant interference and challenges that we're faced with Facebook and regular social media. So, and a private virtual network is a private platform, and one that we're talking about is Mighty Networks. Is the one that I've got another podcast episode with Gina. And when I shared if you remember, I shared my interview with Gina. I said, listen, she also has this manifesto, and this is when we were writing our manifesto. I go, you should read her manifesto. It was sort of meta at the time, and it's about her idea that we own our own data. We're the creators and control of our own information, and so forth. And that's why I chose that platform. In addition to the fact that it's aesthetically, I think, one of the most pleasing, and it's really functionality and their investment is considerable. I think it's the best in the class. It might replace social networks, and at least from a business standpoint, at least what we're seeing with community. So it's a community that's kind of in a private area, no advertising, no interference. And then inside this network, you're able to create really unique spaces. So we created this vision together in this inner circle. And one of the ideas was based on my book, which is let's build an audience before we need it. So you and I were talking about, well, what if we created a private area for the coaches, and then we could also have the studios, and then maybe we could create a space for future cities that we want to sell to franchises to basically pre-populate as my growth, right? And that was part of the strategy and the brand kind of coming together. Do you want to share that? Like, how's that all worked out with the whole virtual community thing?
I seriously love it so much. And we have all of our training on there. And it's, as we're trying to grow a big brand, right? It's so important that everything is systematized. So when I take on a new franchisee, it's like, here you go. And they just go through the courses and the training. And then our clients can be on there from the different cities and interacting with each other. We have tons of free content on there and different challenges. And so, like in San Diego, we started that same thing as part of her launch of, hey, we're coming to San Diego. We started just putting people in there, right? Hey, join our group. You get this free class. You can do this free, choreography, whatever it is. And I mean, she's 2 months in. I think she's less than 3 months in. At 2 months, she hit 200 members. So, and so much of that was that groundwork that we laid through the Vertica Circle Network.
Mm-hmm. And it has a variety of different other additional benefits, which is the idea of a franchise having systems in place to support. And also, you think of the possibility of COVID. It can allow it creates some resilience opportunities for your franchise owners as well. It's like an insurance policy.
Absolutely.
So what's the
And
growth been?
I think we're almost to 2,000 people on our Vertica Circle Network.
Okay,
So
so I'm not even 1,000. I do this for a living. You're at 2,000 and you've been doing it for half the time I've been on that network. That is like, I want people to understand that is extraordinarily awesome, but it's not unusual when you got the things lined up correctly at the end of the day,
yeah.
right? So
Yeah,
that's
it's
so when
the
we think about everybody belongs in the idea of a community, this is a virtual community. Let's talk about community. Like people say they want community, they say, hey, we need to build a community, but there's a difference between saying it and actually doing it. What do you think the difference is? Because I think a lot of people, there is a difference, like actually creating a community within yeah, because you have a strategy internally with each franchise, but you did something really unique. I noticed that doesn't surprise me at all. When we were meeting with all the other franchise owners, you were talking about the community between the franchise owners. You've really embodied this community. You want to share that, like, and how that's really affected your business?
Yeah, well, I mean, it only made sense because, the community within the studio is so important to have the community among the franchise owners also be something that was important. And so that's been really a beautiful side effect. I mean, it was intentional, but an extra bonus of having this now community of business owners, of these people who are stepping into their greatest self, right? They're putting everything on the line in order to follow their dreams and to make a difference in their community. And so it's been really great to see them be able to reach out to each other and support each other. And like an example is when San Diego opened. I know I keep talking about San Diego, but when San Diego opened, one of the other franchisees showed up at their grand opening as a surprise and
And
was
support.
there ready. Yeah, they were like literally, let us scrub toilets, sweep floors, whatever you need. We're here to work. We're here to support you. And I was like, that is so cool. That is so beautiful. I've never heard of that happening in any of the other brands.
See, that is where it's a groundswell. It no longer it's like you didn't create that. You did create it. You created the space for it, the vision for it, but you didn't actually go, hey guys, you should do this. Like that's what I think is what is hard to communicate to people done correctly is the growth becomes invisible without you. It goes exponential, and the cultural field, the relationships go in a totally different direction. Customers and audience are kind of like single serving, but this is different. You're creating relationships inside the studio, cross studio. There was a question, I think, can student from one studio, then if they're visiting another city, can they go to the same studio? You're like, absolutely. Like the idea of I can totally see like you having almost another layer of business where people just want to be part of it, to be for the connection, the human connection, let alone the.
Yeah, and it really goes back to that idea of like when you build a really strong, clear brand, then everything else becomes clear. And so I tell people that whenever we make any decision, we run it through the manifesto, right? Does it help everybody belong, everybody feel beautiful, everybody go vertical? And that will tell us what to do in any situation. And so as we looked at, well, what should we do with memberships? Should we make it so memberships work across the country? Well, of course, because everybody belongs, right? Like it became a no-brainer. And so that was something just recently really like just happened a couple days ago. Somebody went out to one of the other locations and they had on one of the Tucson t-shirts, and so like they were posting it and like just celebrating each other there. And like when they want to, it's almost like I think of the brand Hard Rock Cafe, where people wanted to collect all of the different t-shirts,
Mm-hmm.
and we're seeing that happening already. People want to make sure that they have the tank tops for all of the different locations. And so,
Do you remember that
yeah,
was our
just
strategy? We actually went
yeah,
out
for
when we
sure.
designed it. We were like, we're going to make sure that we have each individual name has its own branded, fitting the same font as the brand, and it has like under each one. And we're gonna Hard Rock Cafe this thing. I remember that. Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
it's
working.
totally
That's what's so
happening. It's
beautiful. Yeah,
totally happening.
I
Yeah,
forgot
they
about
want to
that
get
little one. Yeah.
yeah, they want to get their picture in front of, because each location has like the name of the location printed on the wall. And so they want to make sure they get their picture in front of that location name and all that stuff. So super
So if,
fun.
let's dig deeper into why would somebody, like, if you think of stories back in the day, like Harley Davidson, like people are willing to tattoo it. You're at that level where it's it's not what most people. It's not like being a client. There's a certain there's a shift when it becomes a Groundswell brand. Is like when they feel it's theirs. How does,
Right.
like, why, like, tell me, like, help uncover for somebody that's trying to get their head around, it's the juice is worth the squeeze, as we said, like to do the work to do this. This is where the juice really comes through. That's hard to explain.
Yeah, the juice is so worth the squeeze, and I'm I could probably do a whole podcast just on that, but as
Well, tell
far
me more. What
as
does that mean to you when you say the juice is worth the squeeze?
well,
Because talk
so
about,
first though,
you were nervous about. Okay, we're going to talk about three different things. Sorry.
yeah, so hold on, juice is worth the
Okay.
squeeze because I want to talk about the like
The
when
emotional
people
connection. Yeah.
own when people own something, right?
Yeah.
And so all the time people want to know, Katrina, what's your demographics? What's your demographics? What's your demographics? And I'm like, it's everybody. And I'm pretty sure that this was you and maybe even somebody else on one of your podcasts, and I've now taken it. But it's not the demographics, it's the value
Values.
graphics.
Yeah.
And that's what combines. That's why people want to get the t-shirts and they want to do all these things, is because they want to show the world, hey, I believe this. This is important to me. I belong. I am beautiful. I can go vertical. And they're proud of that. Like they're proud of owning that they are a pole dancer, dare I say it, right? Not just a pole athlete. Hey, I'm a pole dancer. I want to own it. I want to do it. This is me.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, you sent me a video of an interview you did with one of your franchise owners, and she was looking for a brand, and it followed the sort of the same logic, the same thinking or whatever. She was looking for something. Went, oh my gosh, I've been looking at this my whole life. Do you want to share that a little bit?
Yeah, so we have three organic franchise partners, meaning that they came to us, they sought us out and then purchased. So typically in the franchise world, how a partnership is made is they go through a broker. And so it's really unheard of for a brand, especially as new as we are, to have this kind of organic traffic. And so one of our, basically the franchisee that you're talking about had been Googling pole fitness franchises, and when she found us, she was like, that's the one. And she said that she couldn't have built it any better herself, that if she had gone out to build it, she would have built this. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, and she said just connected with her. It was like her. It was like she knew it was. She felt connected to. And I think that's been a common comment that you're getting from your franchise owners and the employees. Yeah, that's cool. I remember, I forgot about that also. Just the idea around how, this is where the ROI comes back. Is if someone's going to buy something, get two different options, and you have to sell them, is different than someone seeking, or they find what
yeah.
they've been looking for. They're buying into what this is. And I think that the fact that it switched from people actually finding out, then that's such an unusual thing for franchises. That speaks to what I think the future growth is going to be. As you get more known, people are going to go, it's a little bit like, why hasn't this been around sooner? It's probably some of the comments you're likely to get, or if you haven't already, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I spoke a little bit just as far as like leading into that, the juice is worth the squeeze, and really just tying that in to, well, many things. But first, the fact of like, when we're going on this discovery process with the franchisees, instead of me trying to have to like convince them about something, right? I share my heart, and then they decide if it aligns with them or not. And I told one of the brokers that during my discovery call that the potential franchisees, they cry. It's very typical. And they were like, what? They cry? Why are they crying? And I was like, that's the kind of connection that we have. That's the kind of connection that we create, right? Because we're extremely clear we're extremely clear on what's important to us. We're extremely clear on what we stand for. And so even these people who have never taken a pole fitness class, when we say, hey, this is what it's about, they say, I get it and I want in. And, I literally had somebody on, it was the first official call. I'm the first official call during the discovery process. I had somebody on that call be like, Katrina, send the paperwork. I want in, which is unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're talking about ROI, just being able to speed up time on that also, of being able to have people really want to get in, want to be a part of this, is huge. And, you were talking a little bit before about like the creating the brand and us working together and all of that. And, when people ask me, oh, hey, how was it having Scott do your brand? I'll be like, oh, no, Scott did not do my brand. Okay. And I'm like, here's why. Scott provided all of the tools. Scott provided the direction. Scott provided the space, but the brand was what was in my heart. And so when you're talking about the juice being worth the squeeze, really, in essence, what this has meant to me and why it's so important is because going through this process of building this brand meant that I reconnected, and then connected at such a higher level to what I feel is my ultimate purpose, my highest potential, my greatest good that I can provide out into the world, right? Instead of just going and being like, hey, I want to create a brand that really works and is going to sell well, I was given the opportunity to create a brand that is a piece of me and is the reflection of what I want to put out into the world. And so, I tell people, you only get one life, right? You really just get one chance here to live life at the fullest potential. And I mean, I already feel at some level, I shared my story, like I'm living on borrowed time anyways. Like my life is a gift at this point anyways, just to be able to be here and do this, and to be able to just have this chance in general. And so having the juice be worth the squeeze is having that opportunity to step in to how I want to live my life, how I want to experience life, and how I want to do things for other people. And, as we were, preparing for the podcast, and I was thinking about, hey, what do I want to say? I mean, I'm sure some people find it interesting as far as like building a franchise, and sure, pole fitness is kind of fun to talk about. And certainly the people that are listening care a lot about building a brand in general. But I think that the biggest thing that I got out of this was that advice you gave me to be brave. And so if I could just pay that forward to anyone that's listening, is to be brave. Be brave. Take your one chance at this life and live it as big and as beautifully and as proud and magnificently as you possibly can. Don't be afraid to make big statements. Don't be afraid to stand for something, right? If each one of us were just a little bit braver, if each one of us were just a little bit more authentic, a little bit truer, man, what a beautiful world this would be. So I do hope that I build a groundswell of people loving their bodies, of people caring about each other. But I hope that through you, I hope I'm helping to build this groundswell of people being brave. I hope that I can be this part of that, of people being brave and really being their truest selves and trying to make the most impact on the world. That's what I hope.
Just I'm without words. There were such sage words. When it's so easy for someone to look at where the brand is and to go, well, what was brave about that? But they weren't there. When you're a founder and owner and you're faced with these decisions that could change the direction, when you're the name of the business, the titling, the style of it, like what we're doing, we were changing it. You really were brave. And I say the second thing I always say is you did the work. And that's probably something that if you want to share a little bit of that, this was no light work. I mean, it really, I think you are my number one person who did all the work and you got all the benefit. And I think this is such a shiny example that maybe let's talk a little bit about the work, because part of being brave is you just weren't just brave and courageous, you did the work. Like we literally did the work, and the deep work we did. For example, I remember personas. I'll just drop on one example. We I think it was 2 to 3 days we worked on personas, and we didn't get off it, and you were happy to stick to it right to the end. Unlike most people, they're kind of like mailing it in at the end, but you were staying right with me, and we got down to such level of specificity of your personas, and that gave me so much. And I begged for it for most clients, and you gave it to me because it gives me a different view when I understand the client, where I can really help you more, because it's not just for you for your direction, it's for me too, right? So I don't know if you remember that, but like if you want to talk a little bit about what the effectiveness is, but also maybe the work, because when people think about building a brand like you did, listen, I want to remind everyone that was 9 months of work. And it
Yeah,
was
and
frustrating. There was pressure. So I want to say one more thing. There was probably pressure that I didn't know about. Going, when is this thing going to work? You dropped it's a pretty big investment you brand with me. But I would argue it's like money made, but it's money back. But at the time, it probably didn't feel like it. I want to share just about that.
Sure, sure. So, yeah, I mean, the money is a whole other subject, but I mean, it was definitely one of the bigger investments I've ever made in my business. Um, which I mean, it was a no-brainer for me from the beginning to do all of this. But as far as the work, I mean, I was getting up at 4 a.m. And I mean, for anybody that's listening, I have 7 children. In addition to running my 2 locations, plus then building a franchise. And so, I mean, if you can imagine getting up at 4 a.m. to start my day. And we did this for months and months. And I had all
2 hour
of this
sessions, you and I
pressure.
be on those calls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had all of this pressure from, my family, from my business partners, because it was supposed to be, like I mentioned before, they were like, "Hey, go find a brander there or a marketer there at Tony Robbins." I was supposed to come home, and like 2 weeks later, we were supposed to launch, and we actually didn't even launch till that was February. We officially launched in October, so that's how long it delayed everything in order to get it officially launched. And I just kept telling people it's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it. We can't rush this. It has to be right. Right. And so, yeah, just being willing to put in the time, but then also there's a lot of like heart work. Right. So I guess it's hand in hand with being brave, but being willing to just sit with things and think about things and question every single thing that we were doing, every part of what we were doing, and say, is this the truest form? Is this really a reflection of what we want to put out? And so, I mean, yeah, that was hard. It was
I
really
know,
hard to be
because sometimes
patient.
you come up with an answer, and I go, okay, let's torpedo it. Is this true? Is this, and it was like, be so easy to move on, but
Yeah,
it's doing that work and questioning everything laboriously and with like tweezers, is how you create, and now you're unshakable, like the confidence. And one of the things that I think that's an attribute that is a difference between people and brand is you were committed to it from the get go. That was something you brought to the table. You knew that the brand was the most important thing, and that's why you said, I'm committed to this. And I'm like, that is exciting, because most
yeah,
people say they are, but they're not. They just want to
right.
get leads. They just want to get it over with. You were like,
Yeah,
I may want to get over with, but I want to make sure I get it right. That is the big difference. I think a big
yeah.
one.
Yeah, and even though like I wasn't I hadn't gone on this journey yet. I had had that experience a couple months prior at the Tony Robbins event where I was like, this is going to be my life's work. And so this has to be right. And so, like, an example of how right we actually got it. And, the brand's always going to evolve and all of these other beautiful things. But when we did the personas, basically we had, these different people and, hey, here's what's important to them. And then months later, we had a whole video production come out and have people share their testimonials. And, these were 2 or 3 minute testimonials. And it was so fun because afterwards, as we were watching the testimonials, I could like exactly match them up to the personas that we had created. And I mean, of course, the people, it wasn't like, well, they got it right because they ran the brand, they read the brand book. They'd never seen the brand book, right? They were just sharing their story. But because we had taken the time and created the personas, now as we were doing our marketing, we were really and truly attracting those people. We were speaking to those people, and like we nailed it. But it was unreal listening to them talk. I was like, did you read the brand book? But I mean,
Yeah, I remember you told me
of
that.
course, of
They
course
couldn't
they
have.
hadn't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the exercise, just to describe it loosely with everyone is what, there's a lot of people when they say personas, they have a vision of what it is. It really is actually 3 different completely disciplines of building personas, put into one that I made into my own. And one of the components was Tony Robbins, the understanding the human needs. The other is sort of my flair on it, which was head, heart, and motivation. And what's their primary question? What's in their heart? What do they love? It's not something. It's a little bit more about the empathy for them, and what's their motivation in terms of like what would excite them. And then we break down prioritize pains and gains in detail, and then prioritize them. And that's getting inside the head of the values and then matching that with the value proposition design. So it's so laborious because you got to go through it if you go through the detail, and then we go back and we vet it against our value proposition design. And if I don't know if you guys can listen and follow with that, but that is what it's the juice of the squeeze. It's not quick to do. It's a lot of work, but we have total clarity. Like literally, I feel like that you're so clear about your vision.
Yeah.
It's showing up
It
that way, and that's
makes
probably the difference. Yeah.
yeah, it makes everything so easy because it's like, well, what should I say? Well, I know what to say. I
Hmm.
just share my heart, right? But I was able to like have some clarity as far as how do I actually put into words these crazy experiences that I've had and be able to share that. So, yeah, for sure. That was the
And I
gift.
think that's my book. Like my book is, if anyone's reading it or is going to read it, is there's 4 phases: build, give, grow, transform. But build takes up like over half the book, and the reason is because nobody wants to spend the time on the build. That's what we're talking about right now. In the build phase, when you read the book, it's like it's really about that. And the way I describe it, and maybe share with them if you feel this is accurate. But the way I describe it is, it's like a bowstring. Like if you're pulling a bowstring back, what happens is it's if you're an entrepreneur, all you want to do is like, let's get going, let's get money. I got cash flow. You got all these pressures. I get it. But to do something that's of significance, that's going to build a groundswell, it's like this resistance going the opposite direction, it feels like. But the benefit is it creates tension, attention. It gives you time to aim. And all that time, you can build anticipation. You can build audience. There's things you can do. So it's not passive. But that energy of build, it is attention. And you are able to hold it longer than most people. Most people have, I don't know of anyone that you're the one that's gone all the way back till it was done. Most people somewhere in there, and I can just see it. Like that's the only explanation I can describe. And they still succeeded, and they are succeeding, but they didn't to the level. Maybe the other one would be Matt from Rootsu. He definitely did too. So, but does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that feel right? Like when I say that?
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that I just know is so true is that energy is everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you really you just have to like own that energy. And so like you're talking about being willing to pull back the bowstring, being able to put that energy into it. And people can't expect for a brand, a business to just magically happen on its own, right? it's that huge pullback that happens. And now after you release, it feels like to other people that things are just happening
So
on their
easy.
own.
Yeah.
Right. And it's got this momentum. So now I guess really it is taking off. I'm not pushing it anymore. Right. But it was that, yes, being willing to slow down, get it right, pull back with the energy, and then aim, right?
Mm-hmm.
This incredible aim of what the vision is. What does it look like? What's the end? So yeah, it's
And then
everything.
we break down your franchise strategy of like, okay, so now we're going to grow. So the second element is give is the new get. So that's exactly what you do to start your business. Maybe like you did describe it a little bit, but you do that across some multiple ways. Talk about what you give, because now it's more of an invitation. You're not selling. Share
Sure.
about that vision. Yeah.
Yeah, so for the give, there's a lot of gives. There's massive gives right now, and these gives were a huge investment and continue to be a huge investment. So like some of the things that we give, we have a complete video tutorial library of pole moves that anybody can access. But we're like, hey, come check out how we're doing it. Come look at how the quality of the instruction that we have, the organization that we have, the level of just exactness with which we're doing this. So people love that. We have people that aren't even associated with the brand that come and check out our tutorials. We have tons of choreography. We're doing the free classes, which again, it's like a complete anomaly in the industry for people to do free classes. But I'm like so passionate about, hey, you have to go into your market and just massively be present there. Right? You got to get to where when you say, hey, I do pole fitness, people say, Vertica?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You've got to get there. So we're giving that to the community, and we're the same thing with the franchisees. Oh my gosh, this has been such a fun give, but a huge give is that we have our first couple of franchisees here. We have held their hands through the launch um, at a level that again is unheard of in the industry. I guess we're just unheard of in the industry. We're just creating our own industry. So
You're just creating an extraordinary differentiation in the way that
yeah,
it's like, if you think about, so being brave, it's like if you follow what most people do, the sea of sameness of like, well, this is how I go do sales. This is how I do marketing. That's not being brave is not just in the start of the brand. It's like at all these different levels of doing it your way. I think that was also
yeah,
one of the things that you and I figured out. And what we do in this process is, what is your way? What do you have
right.
energy for? Do you remember that? Like, we talked a lot
Yeah.
about what you have energy for, because that's a big factor.
Well, and so for these franchisees, they have invested in us. They have invested in themselves. For many of them, this is their life savings that they are putting into this. And again, my husband plays such a major part in this brand. As he and I were doing strategy, it's like we have to make sure that no matter what, these people are successful, because we don't know what we don't know yet. And so, I mean, we held their hands through every step of their launch. We were helping them make phone calls. We were literally having our staff help them with everything, which, it was a huge give. But we're like, hey, that's the kind of franchisors we want to be. We want you to know. Obviously, we won't be able to do this for every single franchisee as they come on
But
in
I
the
think I
future.
would argue you're going to find a different give.
Yes. Well, but so the give for them in the future is that all of this is created. Now they just have to come and plug into it. Right. And so it was like that fast forward of how do we collapse time so that even our brand new franchisees are coming and opening cash flow positive? Well, we have to engineer our own success. And so that's really what we've done. Is we've said we're going to make sure that every single franchisee that opens cash flow positive, so that then they can say, yeah, this is the best decision I've ever made in my life. And they can go and they can tell the new franchisees, and this is how we build a groundswell through that, right? Is having it
Hmm.
having it be successful.
Well, it's funny because when we did the outside of the build, you hadn't really done quite this level, but the give, grow, transform, you were already doing. And I remember going, oh my goodness, you're already following. I told you, I go, wait till we get through this, but you're already embodying a lot of the book. And you're like, and then when I said the give, and you told me, and you're like, and you're giddy because you're like, I'm already doing it. Right? Because you're already doing the free
Yeah.
classes before I met me. That wasn't my innovation. That was already yours. So
Yeah.
just to be clear, like you were already embodying a lot of those. You just weren't even aware, but that was part of what gave your success to begin with. You and I talked about, we were in the Tony Robbins bubble, but there was two people that I think were on stage that were speaking that really were kind of our little guideposts for some strategies here, which was Spanx and what's the name with the makeup. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'll just do a little shout out for her.
Yeah, her speaking is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's Jamie Kern Lima, founder of It Cosmetics. She doesn't know me. Hopefully
Yet.
someday we'll be like BFFs, right? But she has been a huge inspiration to me in just that she's been so brave in her mission of helping to really change the conversation around beauty and to be the change in the world that she wanted to see. And, she talks about when people tell you no, instead to lean into your knowing. And that has been just huge for me because I get told no all the time. I get told no all the time. And that's where I just have to say, you know what? Your no today is just because you don't know. But I know, and I know where this brand is going. And I know how many people need it. And I know it's unstoppable. So, we just move forward.
And
And then Spanx.
well, hold
Go
on,
ahead.
just back to Jamie. I'm just going to remind you of the conversation because this actually led into the Everybody Belongs. Do you remember when she was talking about how she was getting she was on QVC or somebody, she was talking to some venture capitalist, and she goes, somebody of your body type and your size couldn't be successful or something like this. Do you remember this story? I'm trying to remember it, but I
Yeah.
remember it was
Yeah.
meaningful, and I remember you teared up in the conversation. I was like, okay, this is where we're going.
Right. And they told her people won't buy products from someone who looks like you with your body. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I mean, I'm in decent shape and I actually lost 50 pounds coming back to pole, but I've never been right I don't even know what to call it. I've never been the type of body that's like whatever. So I've always had the other type of body. And that really just hit into me of like, can I build a fitness brand if I'm not perfect? And I was like, well, heck yeah, because everybody needs fitness. Right? Everybody needs fitness, not just the super, super, super fit. Right? Everybody needs to go work out. Everybody needs to be healthy. Everybody needs to be in shape. And if people see me coming and stepping forward and not being afraid to show up at the gym, even when I'm not perfect, how empowering is that for other people?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, and just the fact that she was able to really stick to her values and prove him wrong, because he was a venture capitalist. It was a pretty big deal. It was raising a lot of money. They were a private equity firm, which she then later, I think, went back to him after she was a billionaire, and he regretted it. I think he recognized that he was totally read the industry wrong, and that's what when I that story, and you and I were talking about this, I was like, this is blue ocean. Nobody in
Yeah.
fitness is approaching it this way. It just got my hair up. I was like, this is exciting. Like I just it's like I just love your vision. You knew it all along. It's just these pieces kind of had to come together, and that was a good story because I think it gave us some wind beneath our wings about leaning into this was one thing, and then the other was the Spanx story,
Yeah.
manufacturing our
So,
success. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. That's something that I'm constantly like talking about and thinking about is, I mean, I see this in life, right? When you talk about doing the work, the people who believe in something and then just go grab it are the ones that get it. And I look at that in every area of my life. I've had some really beautiful, amazing, successful moments in my life, right? So I graduated valedictorian, but I had to go out and grab that. Same thing. I won a national championship. I had to go out and grab that. That was not handed to me. I had to engineer that success every step of the way. Any of my success in business, it's been because I had to be like, what is it going to take to make it successful? And then just work my butt off to make it happen. And so that was really an inspiring thing from Sarah Blakely, is she said, what do I have to do to engineer my own success? And so that's the question we're constantly asking, right? We believe in this so much. How do we go out and grab it? How do we make it so that it can't fail? And really and truly, the answer that we came up with was we make sure our franchisees don't fail. We make sure that no matter what happens, that they're successful. We can't have anybody that's the weak link, or that we say, oh, well, it's too bad it didn't work for them, right? Just like we wouldn't say that about one of our clients at the studio. We help all of our clients be successful. We help all of our clients go vertical. We help all of our clients feel like they belong. We help all of our clients feel beautiful. The same thing with our franchisees. That's how we engineer our success with growing this brand, is that every single person that comes in has to feel that they are of value to the brand, not just because of the revenue that they create, but them as a person, their own stories, right? We have to help every single one of them feel like they have value, and that they have what it takes to build this brand, that they belong here, and that they can go vertical. Right? We have to help them. We have to give them the tools. We have to hold their hand. We have to stand with them shoulder to shoulder to make sure that they go vertical. And, we see the transformation of the students within the studio. And, I've talked about that a whole lot on here, about how I'm so passionate about that. And that's my life work. But this has been such a fun new level of my life's work, is helping provide that transformation for these franchise owners. And just like the students that come in are already completely amazing, my franchise owners are some of the smartest and most successful people already that I've ever met. They're amazing. But watching them go through this transformation of stepping up into their power, into their leadership, into their greatest good, oh my gosh, it's mind-blowing. It's so rewarding for me. It's so fun. And yeah, that's been it just coming all together, seeing engineering our own success is engineering their success.
Well said. It's like this whole thing is by design, not default. And if I look at future growth, you and I have talked a couple times about great leaders anticipate. And that's what I love about you. You play along quite well, where we can banter a little bit. And we were thinking about, how do we actually anticipate? I think even Boston, in advance, you were looking in advance. We were talking about, like, how do we, like, in the community, let's build an audience before we need it, like in my book. And let's like, how do we expand, Scott? So we were strategizing about future growth. Maybe talk a little bit about some of these things. I think that really just shows how to anticipate and actually almost engineer your future growth and direct it. Because I think someone that's starting a new brand, what I would have you kind of like share a little bit is, a lot of people when they're building a business, they're only focused on, I just need to get sales. And we're trying to be way more intentional. And we're going, let's get sales in markets that are going to make a difference to make this momentum of this groundswell really tip over. Do you want to share that a little bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've had some major successes like immediately, but this is the long game, right? This is the long game. And so just having that mindset of what is the success of the long game. And so thinking about, where do we want to be? Which markets do we want to be in? And who do we want to partner with? And we actually have turned down, I think, 3 people already who have said, hey, we would really like to move forward with you guys. And we said, I'm sorry, it's not a fit for whatever reason. And so just being really intentional. And I have to go back to everybody belongs, right? It's not because they weren't good enough. It was because their hearts weren't in it. Right?
Yeah.
And
It was
so
about transaction, not about the mission. That's the
exactly,
difference, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, as we have really leaned into that, and just making sure that the people who we're bringing into our brand, and then the places that we're going, are a fit. And we have, excuse me, we have started building some of the different like groups on the Vertica Circle network for places that we aren't even yet, that we're not even going. So we've got like a group going in South Florida and a couple groups in like Utah, and just people that are actually literally waiting for us, even though we're not even there yet.
Right. I think if you're listening to this and you're even from a different country, I mean, I think that's part of anticipating what the potential growth is. And one of the things I would argue is you've grabbed things in the past. The one thing maybe you've done differently about this is you've claimed. You're claiming
Yes.
extraordinary here, right?
Yes. Absolutely. That's beautiful differentiation.
Yeah, for sure, and I see that, and I think that's what people are when they're listening to this. I think you're gonna this will be you're gonna if you listen to this, you're gonna be listening. This won't be the last time you'll be hearing more from Katrina, but you'll be like, man, I remember when I heard first about Katrina on this podcast, and or you hear about Vertica. You're gonna be hearing a lot more about this, like I think on a national level, before you know it, and I think it'll be considered like an overnight success, but you weren't an overnight success. This has been this has been your life coming together at all at sort of this moment in time, all the training, all the investment, all the stuff that you've done, the valedictorian, all the stuff's led to this. If as we're kind of looking to wrap this up a little bit, the last piece of the puzzle that I want to share that I think is profound about, you've touched on it several times, which is transformation. The I believe, many people are still competing in the experience economy, creating a great experience at a gym. Like we're looking at Orange Theory as your competitor, as an example. Like who are we really against? We're not really there isn't really pole fitness competition, but the competition is we looked at, which was everyday fitness, and most people are looking at fitness in our value proposition. We noticed that people actually what can be different is progression and people having fun getting fit. Those were the two leading attributes so I'm going to quickly say value proposition is motivation equals perceived value minus perceived cost. So the perceived value was number one was fun getting fit, and the other was progression. And that progression, if you want to share a little bit about that, because that's what's so different about pole fitness that I'm just like blown away by, but it makes total sense. It's like you progress, unlike if you go to the gym and sure you progress on the weight scale or your fitness, your timing, but it progress in skill. And that progression also, there's another element, which is transformation. We're moving into the transformation economy. This franchise is moving where the economy isn't even there yet. And this is what Joe Pine's talking about in his new book. He's got research that's out on this. If you're listening, there's going to be a podcast I'm going to do with Joe Pine specifically on this. But transformational design, this is where you're getting your juice back, the love of like seeing these lives change. But also there's another compelling thing I talk about in my book, and tell me if this is true. People are compelled to bring other people in. This is the growth loop. This is why it's such a powerful mechanism for growth, because you're doing good. It's good for your business and it feels good and it actually grows. It makes sense. Maybe just if you can kind of share how this works in your business anyways.
Yeah. So when people start pole, they want to scream from the rooftops that they're doing pole. Like it becomes all that they want to talk about, all that they want to do. They want to make sure that every single person sees, they want to show on their phone, hey, look at my new pole trick. Like it's because they love it so much. And specifically, like within Vertica, we have 10 different levels of moves. And it's so fun because people, yeah, they don't be fooled by the every body belongs. This is a killer workout and people get incredible shape, right? They really defy gravity. But the amazing thing that happens is people could care less, honestly, about what they look like when they're doing pole because they are obsessed with the progression. They want to go in and they want to get the next move. They want to do the next thing. They love how strong they're becoming. They love how toned they're becoming, but they love that they can do these things that they thought were once impossible. Now they're floating through the air. They're defying gravity. And it's so empowering for people and it's addicting. And so that's really where so much of like all of this comes together again, of we are providing this transformation for people, right? We are providing this transformation. We're helping people go from like at the core, we're helping them go from an average person into an aerialist, right? And along with that, though, what I want to say about the transformation is it's very meta in the form of the exact same thing that happened with the brand is what happens with people. So, with the brand, we were being told, hey, we have to be this one way. And as the brand went through this major transformation, the beauty of the brand that came out was actually just within the authenticity of the brand becoming itself. And that is at its core the transformation that happens to our clients, right? The transformation actually becomes a reclamation. They're reclaiming their own identity. They're becoming themselves at the greatest sense. And that is the most beautiful thing, right? So, yes, there's major change that's going on, but the beauty is in them really becoming themselves.
That's beautiful. Again, it's when you think about the transformation, when they're compelled to tell other people, it's because it's something has changed within them that will never be the same. And that's what compels,
Yep.
that's what creates these avid fans that are now compelled to tell other people how to listen. And it's funny because when you talk about this transformation before, in my mind, so this is just me not knowing the cultural field, I imagined that somebody said anyone can go vertical. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm imagining that someone's got to get, but you sent me pictures of these women that I arguably would have maybe misjudged them, but they're totally vertical. Like they're like these larger women and they are ripping up and down these poles and like it defies, and I'm like, okay, this is changing the way I think the cultural perceptions are in such a big way that it's not, when people think about, well, you're whatever size you are, I just want you to know what I saw. I know if you want to share that a little bit, it's like anybody can go vertical. Like share that maybe a little bit because it's true. That's not a
Yeah.
hyperbole.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm, this is literally what we do at like, we help people go from this is how you walk around the pole to this is how you climb the pole to now this is how you defy gravity. And the pole is always just a metaphor for life, right? But so as people come to this workout and they come to this experience and it's hard and they get some bruises and they continue to show up, they get stronger. They develop the skills that are necessary to go to the next level. And I love this about pole. I taught ballet for almost 20 years. And with ballet, I love ballet. Ballet is amazing. It will always hold an amazing, special place in my heart. But with ballet, there were many times when, although I might not have said it out loud as I was working with certain students, it was like, you just might not have the right body type for this, right? Or, hey, this might not actually, you may not be able to be a professional. Now, of course, with my background and everything, I still worked my guts out to help those people become everything that they needed to be. And I personally believe that anybody can do ballet. So I won't go off on that tangent because obviously, anyway, with that though, with pole fitness, anybody can do this. Everybody can do this. Our bodies are made when we go through this kind of stress and we put them in these positions, they're made to grow. They're made to get better. They're made to basically literally rise to the challenge. And so that's been one of my most favorite things is that I can look somebody in the eye in class and I can tell them, if you come 3 times a week for 3 months, you will climb this pole. And they always do. They always do. To the point now to where we have a little bell at the top and they sign their names up at the top too.
That's fun. That's a good progression. So, the one biggest flaw, so I'm going to talk about the biggest flaw of our brand guide and our process came up on this topic. I don't know if you remember this. And that was me trying to find stock footage or footage of actually people that represent your clients. We couldn't find anything. The amount of work and search that we had to find, and it was really disheartening. It really made me realize that there is so much work to be done beyond what Vertica does. I think it's really showcasing and creating content, and that's when you leaned into being more, I would say, not say more authentic, because I would assume that you weren't, but I'm just saying you've leaned into creating your own content for that very reason, because having Pole Fitness, I tried to find fitness of representative until we actually got photos that you went and commissioned. We didn't really have much of anything that was actually true to the brand. Do you remember this?
Right.
And you were
Oh,
like,
for
we're
sure.
going to change this. Like we really want to get your photographer to then submit it to stock photography. Like we're like, this is wrong, right? It's not
Yeah.
fair to, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. No, when we went and we wanted to have like that level of professionalism as we were showing the brand, and it was all very thin white women on the pole. And I was like, this is not who's in class, right? There's every race at class, there's every age, there are men, there are certainly every body type. And I was like, this is not representing us well. And so yeah, we definitely had to like, we've done a lot of work in having professional photography for the brand to be able to show all of these different people at such a beautiful level.
That's awesome. Well, I know we've gone way over but to the time that we said we would,
Yeah.
but it was such good energy going there. So I just want to wrap up this thing. You gave me a gift on this conversation because, people ask sometimes, like trying to describe what I do, and thank you for this podcast, because not only is telling your story, it's telling mine too. So it's really,
Absolutely.
thank you, for sharing some of your thoughts. And we talked, and I think the word that came up for me is that's changed my language in this moment, because I get this from you. We get a lot of juice. We've just code of create, I think, and is brand transformations. I never thought of that, but actually I create transformational brands, but I've always said that, but not brand transformation as an actual process. I think that's what maybe I need to change my messaging for that. So for that, I thank you. I think that's what I'm going to take away from this call. And
Absolutely.
I hope everyone takes away the journey, the juices worth the squeeze, doing the work and being brave like you've been, and change the world. I mean, this is what you've claimed it. You're going to change the world. So for those that want to join you to change the world, join the movement, join the inner circle. Where would you like to send them? And I'll put all the links you want in. But if you want to give the main links, that's great. And I'll put all the rest in there too.
Yeah. So the easiest place to find us would be on our network verticacircle.com. Also Instagram at Vertica Fitness. And then you want to just look at the website, verticafitness.com. So yeah, would love to have people try a free class, check out the franchise. But like I said, the biggest thing that I hope people get is just that invitation to be brave.
Thank you for sharing. This has been such a this is like, for a podcast, for me, being I podcast and I also do consultative work, to be able to interview the before and after 1 year, just 1 year, is for me is just such a joy. Like this, I thank you for being on the show. Thank you for all you do, and I'm looking forward to what we do next. So without further ado, thank you everyone for listening. If you have any suggestions, comments you want to send to her, just go to groundswell.fm. There's a voicemail there where you can just click on the link, drop me a voicemail. I'll send it to you back. I'll even forward it if you want to forward it on to Katrina. We'll be happy to do that. Until next time, mahalo.